The wrong door swung open at midnight, and Matthias Orlov felt the air stop moving in his lungs for the first time in 3 centuries. She stood on his threshold, flushed and breathless, hair escaping a loose twist, one hand raised to knock again. Human. Completely, gloriously human. And wearing the exact face he had painted from memory in 1724, the face he had sketched obsessively in margins of letters never sent, the face that visited him in dreams where he still possessed the mercy of unconsciousness. "Oh, thank God," she said, words tumbling out in a rush. "I'm so sorry to bother you, but is this 23-seater? My phone died, and I've been walking in circles for 20 minutes trying to find this party, and I'm pretty sure I'm extremely late and my friend is going to kill me." She stopped, finally looking past his shoulder into the entrance hall behind him. The candlelight caught her eyes. They were brown, he noted distantly, though in his memories they had been green. Different then. But the shape of her face, the precise architecture of cheekbone and jaw, the way her mouth curved slightly higher on the left when uncertainty crossed her expression, that was exact. "This is 20, he said, and his voice came out steadier than he had any right to expect. 23 is 3 houses down, the brick one with the blue door." "Oh," she deflated slightly, embarrassment coloring her cheeks. "I'm so sorry. I really didn't mean to." Her gaze drifted again to the interior visible behind him, the high ceiling strung with crystal chandeliers, the marble floor, the paintings in gilt frames lining walls that should not physically fit inside a narrow townhouse facade. "Wow, your place is beautiful." Matthias became aware that he was still holding the door, still standing motionless, still staring at her like a man witnessing resurrection. He forced himself to step back slightly, to adopt the easy smile that had carried him through countless interactions over countless years. "Thank you. It's older than it looks from outside." Understatement of several centuries. She laughed, a warm sound that did something complicated to his chest. "Well, I'll let you get back to your evening. Sorry again for disturbing you." She was turning away. She was leaving. The moment was collapsing into an ordinary mistake, a wrong door, a brief exchange between strangers who would never see each other again. Matthias felt panic flare beneath his ribs, bright and sharp. "The party you're looking for," he said quickly. "At 23, that's the Morrison place. They host every few months. Loud music, too many people, drinks that are mostly sugar." She turned back, eyebrows raised, a smile playing at her lips. "You've been." "I've heard it through the walls." Also a lie. His walls were spelled to keep out all mundane sound, but she didn't need to know that. "I'm Matthias." "Fiona," she said, and offered her hand. He took it carefully, conscious of the warmth of her skin, the pulse visible at her wrist, the sheer impossible aliveness of her. Her grip was firm, confident. When she pulled away, he felt the absence like a wound. "Well, Matthias, thanks for the directions. Maybe I'll actually find this party now before it ends." She was already backing down the steps, already moving away from him, already disappearing back into the ordinary world where she belonged, and he decidedly did not. "Fiona," he said, and she paused, glancing back. "If the party disappoints, my door's 20. I make better drinks than the Morrisons." It was forward. It was probably too much. But she laughed again, brighter this time, and something in her expression shifted into consideration. "I'll keep that in mind." Then she was gone, hurrying down the dark street, and Matthias was left standing in his doorway with his heart attempting to beat its way through his sternum. He closed the door with deliberate calm, leaned his forehead against the ancient wood, and tried to remember how to breathe. 300 years. He had waited 300 years, and she had knocked on his door by accident. Behind him, a dry voice said, "Well, that was interesting." Matthias turned to find Lucian standing in the hallway, arms crossed, white hair gleaming in the candlelight. His oldest friend, his occasional advisor, his most persistent tormentor. Lucian's red eyes held far too much amusement. "Don't," Matthias said. "Don't what? Don't point out that you just let your reincarnated lost love walk away to attend a mediocre human party 3 doors down? Don't mention that you've been waiting for this moment since 1724, and your grand response was to give her directions and a vague invitation for drinks." "She's not," Matthias stopped, pressed his palms against his eyes. "We don't know that she's anything. She looks similar, that's all." "She looks identical," Lucian said flatly. I saw the paintings, Matthias. I was there when you commissioned the portrait. That is Katerina's face. Her name is Fiona. Her name this time is Fiona. Lucian moved closer, and his voice lost some of its edge. You know what this means. The 300 years. The prophecy was a drunken rambling from a hedge witch I never should have consulted. But Matthias could hear the doubt in his own voice. He had been so desperate then, so raw with grief. Katerina had died in his arms, blood on her lips, poison burning through her system before he could even attempt to turn her. And the witch had told him, with eyes that glowed too bright and a smile that cut too sharp, that death was not always the end, that what was lost could circle back. 300 years, she had said, 300 years to the day, and the door will open again. He had dismissed it as cruel comfort, the kind of lie people told themselves to survive unbearable loss. He had tried to forget. He had failed spectacularly at forgetting. Drunk or not, she was right about the timing, Lucian pointed out, and she was right about the door. Fiona knocked on your door, Matthias, your door specifically in a city of millions, on a street she'd never visited before. Matthias wanted to argue, but the coincidence sat heavy in his chest. 300 years to the day. He had checked the calendar obsessively as the date approached, had tried to convince himself he was being foolish, had failed to sleep for a week straight, despite his body's indifference to exhaustion. And then she had knocked. Even if it's true, he said carefully, even if she is what, Katerina reborn, that doesn't mean she'll feel anything for me. She's a completely different person, different life, different memories, different everything. Then you'll have to make her fall in love with you again. Lucian said it as though it were simple, as though winning someone's heart were as straightforward as signing a treaty or negotiating a trade agreement. Matthias laughed, bitter. You make it sound easy. You're the vampire king. You've negotiated peace between blood feuds that lasted centuries. You've charmed your way through a dozen courts and emerged with alliances no one thought possible. Surely one human woman isn't beyond your capabilities. She's not a treaty, Matthias said quietly, and I won't manipulate her into something she doesn't want. If she feels nothing for me, then that's the end of it. Lucian's expression shifted into something more serious. You know it's not that simple. The oath? The oath was a mistake, Matthias cut him off with a sharp gesture. A stupid, grief-stricken mistake I made 3 centuries ago, and I've regretted it every day since. The oath. Gods, he had tried so hard not to think about the oath, but it sat at the back of his mind always, a weight he couldn't shed. In his desperation after Katerina's death, he had sought out something older than witches, something that lived in the spaces between worlds, an entity that dealt in bargains and binding promises. He had begged for her return, offered anything, everything. The entity had laughed at him, laughed and said that death was not his to negotiate, but that sometimes rarely, unpredictably souls did return. It offered him a deal. If Katerina's soul returned within 300 years, he would have 1 lunar cycle to win her love freely, without compulsion or manipulation. If he succeeded, they would have their second chance. If he failed, the entity would claim her soul permanently, dragging it into the spaces where lost things went. He had been insane with grief. He had agreed. And now the 300 years were up, and she was here, and he had 30 days to make her fall in love with him without being able to tell her the stakes. You need a plan, Lucian said. I need her to go to that party and have a good time and live her life without me hovering over her like some obsessed specter. Matthias moved deeper into the house, toward the library where he kept the good whiskey. He poured himself a measure with hands that were almost steady. Lucien followed, persistent. And when the month ends and the entity comes to collect, what then? Then I'll fight it. You can't fight an oath-bound entity. That's why they're called oath-bound. The contract is absolute. Matthias drank the whiskey in one swallow, felt it burn down his throat without providing any relief. Then I'll find another way. I've had 300 years to think about this, Lucian. I'm not letting some ancient creature take her because I was too grief-stricken to think clearly in 1724. You're not going to tell her? It wasn't a question. Matthias met his friend's eyes and saw the concern there, the worry. What would I say? Hello, stranger. You're the reincarnation of my dead lover, And by the way, you need to fall in love with me in the next month or an eldritch entity gets to keep your soul forever? That's not a courtship. That's a hostage situation. So what will you do? Matthias set down the glass with careful precision. I'm going to that party. Lucian blinked. You haven't attended a human party in decades. Then I'm overdue. Matthias was already moving toward the stairs, toward his rooms, toward the closet full of clothes that would help him blend into a modern gathering. She invited me, technically, said I should come by if the party disappointed. Matthias. I know what I'm doing. He didn't really. But he had 30 days, and she had walked into his life by accident. And if this was his only chance, if she was his only chance, then he was going to take it. The Morrison house vibrated with bass, the windows glowing with colored lights, people spilling out onto the front lawn with red cups and loud laughter. Matthias paused at the edge of the property, adjusting to the noise, the press of too many heartbeats, the overwhelming scent of perfume and alcohol and human warmth. He found Fiona near the kitchen, talking with a woman who had pink streaks in her hair and an expression of deep skepticism. Fiona looked slightly overwhelmed, holding a drink she wasn't consuming, her gaze darting around the crowded room as though searching for escape routes. Matthias moved through the crowd like water, not touching anyone, somehow always finding the gaps between bodies. He stopped beside her, close enough to be heard over the music, but not so close as to crowd. So, does it disappoint? She turned, and her face lit with recognition and something that might have been relief. Matthias, you actually came. You made it sound appealing. A lie. She had made it sound like torture, but he would have walked into an active volcano if it meant seeing her again. The pink-haired woman was staring at him with undisguised interest. Friend of yours, Fee? Neighbor, Fiona said quickly. We just met, actually. I knocked on his door by accident looking for this place. She gestured vaguely at the chaos around them. Lucky accident, the woman said, and something in her tone suggested layers Matthias didn't have time to parse. She extended a hand. I'm Jade. I dragged Fiona here against her better judgment. Guilty party, then. Matthias shook her hand briefly. Human warmth, human fragility. He was always slightly terrified of breaking people by accident. I'm going to get another drink, Jade announced in the tone of someone creating a transparent excuse to leave. You two talk. Fee, try to have fun for once in your life. Then she was gone, melting into the crowd, and Matthias was alone with Fiona in a room full of strangers. Sorry about her, Fiona said, but she was grinning. She thinks I'm too serious. Are you? Probably. I work too much. According to Jade, I need to live a little. She made air quotes, rolling her eyes. Hence the party I didn't want to attend. What do you do? Matthias asked, because it seemed like the normal question, the expected question, the kind of thing strangers asked each other at loud parties. I'm an archivist. I work for the City Historical Society, cataloging old documents and records. It's exactly as boring as it sounds. I doubt that. He could picture it easily. Fiona bent over ancient papers, careful hands preserving history, eyes bright with the pleasure of discovery. I think it sounds fascinating. She gave him a look that was half amusement, half disbelief. You're either very kind or very strange. Can I be both? That startled a laugh out of her, genuine and warm. Fair point. What about you? What do you do when you're not living in a mysteriously beautiful house that defies spatial physics? He had prepared for this question, had a dozen cover stories ready depending on context. I'm in acquisitions, art mostly, historical pieces, antiquities, things with provenance. Not entirely a lie. He did acquire art, though mostly for his own collection, and he had several lifetimes' worth of pieces with impeccable provenance, given that he had often acquired them directly from the artists. That actually does sound fascinating, Fiona said. Do you travel a lot? I used to. Less now. I prefer staying in one place. He had spent the last 300 years building this life, this identity, this carefully constructed normalcy. Moving too much attracted attention, and attention was dangerous for someone who didn't age. They talked for an hour, maybe more, standing in the kitchen while the party swirled around them. She was funny, Matthias discovered, with a dry wit that caught him off guard and a tendency to notice details others missed. She asked good questions, listened carefully to his answers, and had opinions about everything from city politics to the best coffee shops, to whether historical accuracy mattered in period dramas. She was nothing like Katerina, who had been quiet and gentle and perpetually startled by the world's cruelty. Fiona was sharp, confident, a little guarded, but willing to warm once she decided you were worth the effort. He liked her. Not the memory of someone else, not the ghost of an old love, but her. Fiona Davenport, archivist, skeptical party attendee, woman who knocked on wrong doors at midnight. "You're staring," she said, and there was color in her cheeks, visible even in the kitchen's chaotic lighting. "Sorry, you're easy to look at." "That's a line. Doesn't make it less true." She bit her lip, considering him. "You're very smooth, Matthias Orlov. Do you flirt with all your accidental visitors?" "Only the ones who threaten to come back for better drinks." He kept his voice light, teasing, even though his heart was attempting gymnastics. "The offer stands, by the way. This party is loud and your drink looks terrible." She glanced down at the cup in her hand, which did indeed look unappetizing. "It is pretty bad." "Then come have something good instead. My house is quiet, well lit, and I promise the company is better than this chaos." It was too forward again, too fast. He saw her hesitate, saw the flicker of uncertainty cross her face. But then she looked around at the crowded party, at the drunk strangers, at the chaos Jade had dragged her into, and something in her expression settled into decision. "Okay," she said, "but if you turn out to be a serial killer, I'm haunting you forever." "Noted." They left together, slipping out the side door while no one was paying attention. The street was quieter, darker, the kind of old neighborhood where trees grew thick and streetlights cast pools of amber glow. Fiona walked beside him easily, hands in her jacket pockets, breath misting slightly in the cool air. "This is probably stupid," she said as they approached his door. "Going to a stranger's house. Jade would kill me if she knew." "You can text her the address," Matthias offered. "Let her know where you are. I don't want you to feel unsafe." Fiona pulled out her phone, frowned at the dark screen. "Right, dead battery. That's how this whole evening started." "Use mine." He handed her his phone without hesitation, watched her type out a quick message to her friend. The trust implicit in the gesture made something in his chest ache. She barely knew him, and she was already willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. He wouldn't waste that trust. Couldn't. Inside, he poured her a proper drink whiskey, aged and smooth, the kind that cost more than most people's monthly rent. She accepted it with a murmur of thanks, then wandered his entrance hall like someone visiting a museum, taking in the paintings and the architecture with an archivist's careful attention. "This place really doesn't make sense," she said, pausing in front of a painting he'd acquired in Vienna in 1889. "The outside is normal row house, the inside is something out of a Gothic novel. How does that work?" "Very good construction. Also magic. Extensive spell work and several favors called in from a witch who owed him for a rescue operation in the 1950s. But again, details she didn't need." She turned to face him, eyes bright with curiosity. "You're very mysterious, you know that?" "I've been told." He gestured toward the library, the most comfortable room, the place where he spent most of his time when he wasn't handling kingdom business or pretending to sleep. "Come sit. Tell me more about being an archivist. I want to hear about the least boring day you've ever had at work." They sat in leather chairs by the fireplace, which lit itself with a whispered command he hid in a cough. Fiona didn't seem to notice the impossible nature of it, too busy launching into a story about discovering a cache of letters from the 1800s hidden in a false drawer, letters that revealed a secret romance between a mayor's daughter and a traveling performer. Matthias listened, watched her hands move as she talked, memorized the cadence of her voice. She was so alive, so present, every word and gesture vibrant with energy. It was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. When she finally paused for breath, he said, "You love it, the work." "I do." She looked surprised by her own admission. "Which is weird, right? I spend my days in a basement surrounded by old paper and barely talk to anyone. But there's something about touching history, about preserving these tiny pieces of people's lives. It feels important." "It is important." Matthias leaned forward, serious. "History is memory. Without people like you, we forget who we were. We lose the thread of continuity that makes us human. You say that like you've thought about it a lot. I have. More than she could know. He had lived through centuries of history, watched empires rise and fall, seen countless lives flicker and fade. Memory was the only thing that kept any of it meaningful. Fiona was quiet for a moment, studying him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Then she said, "You're not what I expected when I knocked on your door tonight." "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Someone annoyed at being disturbed. Someone who would give me directions and close the door." "Not?" She gestured vaguely at him, at the room, at the comfortable space between them. "This." "Happy accident, then." "Maybe." But she was smiling, and her guard was down, and Matthias thought maybe, just maybe, this could work. Not because of destiny or reincarnation or ancient prophecies, but because they were two people having a conversation, and sometimes that was enough. They talked until nearly dawn. Fiona kept checking her watch, apologizing for staying so late, but she never quite managed to leave. Finally, when the first hints of gray were touching the sky beyond his spelled windows, she stood reluctantly. "I really should go. I have work in—" She checked her watch again, winced. 4 hours. "I'll call you a car." Matthias was already pulling out his phone, already arranging for a driver. The sun would be up soon, and he needed to retreat to the lower levels of his house where spelled darkness kept him safe. But he walked her to the door anyway, unwilling to cut short even a single moment. On the threshold, she turned back. "Thank you. For the drink, the conversation, all of it. This was nice." "Nice," he repeated, as though testing the word. "I'll take it." She laughed, then did something unexpected, rose on her toes and kissed his cheek, quick and light. "Good night, Matthias." He stood frozen as she walked to the waiting car, as she climbed in and waved through the window as the vehicle pulled away, carrying her back into her ordinary life. His cheek burned where her lips had touched, warm and impossible. Behind him, Lucian cleared his throat. "So, that went well." "She kissed me." "I noticed." "On the cheek." "Baby steps," Lucian said dryly. "You have 29 more days, plenty of time to escalate from cheek kisses to declarations of eternal love." Matthias turned on him. "This isn't a joke." "I know," Lucian's expression softened. "I know it's not. But Matthias, you need to tell her, at least part of it. She deserves to know what she's walking into. If I tell her, she'll run, or she'll stay out of some misguided sense of obligation, and that's worse. And if you don't tell her and the month ends badly, she'll hate you forever. Then I'll deserve it." Matthias moved past him, heading for the stairs that led down, away from the coming daylight. "I'm not trapping her in this. Whatever happens, it has to be her choice." He spent the day in restless sleep, his mind churning with possibilities and fears. When he woke at dusk, there was a message on his phone. Fiona, thanking him again for the evening, suggesting maybe they could do it again sometime if he was interested. He was interested. Gods, he was interested. They fell into a pattern over the next 2 weeks. She would finish work and come by his house, and they would talk for hours, easy and comfortable, as though they'd known each other for years instead of days. Sometimes Lucian would join them, charming and witty, helping fill silences when Matthias got too caught in his own head. Sometimes they would walk the neighborhood at night, Fiona pointing out small details of the street's history that she'd researched, Matthias listening and contributing observations from personal experience he had to carefully frame as historical knowledge. She was brilliant. She was funny. She was kind in ways that surprised him, stopping to help a lost cat, tipping delivery drivers generously, asking after the elderly man who ran the corner store. And he was falling in love with her all over again, except it wasn't all over again. It was new. It was different. It was specific to this person, this Fiona, not the memory of someone else. The problem was the oath, the entity, the knowledge that time was running out, and he still hadn't figured out how to fix this. On the 17th night, she asked him, "Do you believe in fate?" They were in his library again, her favorite room, surrounded by books and firelight. The question came out of nowhere, breaking a comfortable silence. Matthias considered his answer carefully. "I think fate is overrated. I prefer choice." "But what if some things are meant to happen?" She was curled in her chair, looking at him with an intensity that made his breath catch. "What if certain people are meant to meet? Do you believe that?" "I don't know. She bit her lip, a gesture he'd come to recognize as uncertainty. I've never felt this way before. Like I was supposed to be here. Like knocking on your door wasn't an accident. His heart stopped. Fiona. I know it's fast, she said quickly. I know we barely know each other, but I can't shake this feeling that I don't know, that there's something familiar about you. Like déjà vu, except stronger. He should tell her. This was the moment. But the words stuck in his throat, heavy with fear. What if I told you that fate was real, but it wasn't kind? That sometimes the universe sets things in motion that feel inevitable but come with terrible prices? She sat up straighter, reading something in his tone. What are you saying? I'm saying... He stopped, ran a hand through his hair, decades of courtly composure fraying at the edges. I'm saying that I care about you, more than I have any right to, and I need you to know that whatever you feel, whatever you decide, it has to be your choice. No pressure, no obligation. Matthias, you're scaring me a little. I don't mean to. He crossed to her chair, knelt so they were at eye level. I just need you to know that you're not anyone's replacement. You're not a second chance or a do-over. You're you, and that's what matters. She reached out, touched his face gently. Who did you lose? The question was so direct, so intuitive, that it stole his breath. Someone I loved, a long time ago. And I look like her. Not a question. He closed his eyes briefly. Yes. Is that why you invited me in? Why you've been spending time with me? Her voice was careful, controlled, but he could hear the hurt underneath. No. He caught her hand, held it against his cheek. Maybe at first, maybe for the first 5 minutes. But Fiona, you are nothing like her, nothing, and I'm not spending time with you because you remind me of the past. I'm spending time with you because you're brilliant and funny, and you make me want things I stopped letting myself want centuries ago. She went very still. Centuries? And that's when he realized his mistake, the slip that revealed too much. He could lie, could laugh it off as exaggeration, but her eyes were too sharp, and she was already piecing things together. You don't age, she said slowly. Your house doesn't follow normal physics. You only meet me at night. You drink whiskey, but I've never seen you eat. She pulled her hand back, standing up, putting space between them. What are you? Fiona. What are you? Sharper now, demanding. He rose to his feet, kept his distance, let her have the room she needed. I'm a vampire. I'm the vampire king, actually, though that's mostly ceremonial at this point. I've lived for 900 years, and yes, I lost someone I loved 3 centuries ago, and yes, you look like her. But you are not her, and what I feel for you is not about her. The silence that followed was deafening. Fiona stared at him, face pale, breathing quick. He waited for her to bolt, to scream, to do any of the sensible things a human should do when confronted with the supernatural. Instead, she laughed, high and sharp and edged with hysteria. Vampire King. Of course. Why not? This is my life now. You don't have to stay, he said quietly. You can leave. I won't follow. I won't bother you. You can forget this ever happened. Can I? She rounded on him, eyes blazing. Can I really forget? Because I'm pretty sure finding out vampires are real and I've been having drinks with their king is not something that just slips your mind. Then I'll help you forget. There are ways. Don't you dare! She pointed at him, furious. Don't you dare suggest messing with my memories? I don't care what you are. That's not okay. He raised his hands in surrender. You're right. I'm sorry. She paced, agitated, clearly trying to process. Then she stopped, turned back to him. Prove it. What? Prove you're a vampire. Because right now I'm about 50-50 on whether you're telling the truth or completely unhinged. So he showed her. Extended his fangs, let his eyes shift to the red that marked his kind, moved faster than human sight could follow to appear behind her, and then back in front. She gasped, stumbled back, caught herself against the chair. Okay, she said faintly. Okay, that's convincing. I'm sorry. He stayed where he was, giving her space. I should have told you sooner. I should have been honest from the beginning. Why weren't you? Because I was selfish. Because I wanted more time with you before everything got complicated. She studied him for a long moment, and he couldn't read her expression. Then she said, The woman you lost, the one I look like. What happened to her? She was murdered, poisoned by rivals who wanted to hurt me. I tried to save her, tried to turn her, but I was too late. And you've been mourning her for 300 years. Not mourning, he said carefully. Remembering. There's a difference. Is there? She wrapped her arms around herself, a protective gesture. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been waiting for her to come back. And now, here I am, wearing her face. And you're what? Hoping I'll be her replacement? No. He said it with all the conviction he possessed. Fiona, I know the difference between you and her. Katerina was gentle and kind, and would never have demanded I prove my nature or called me out on my nonsense. You are sharp and brave, and you challenge me at every turn. I don't want you to be her. I want you to be you. But you think I'm her, reincarnated or resurrected or whatever. He hesitated. And she caught it immediately. You do. Oh my God, you actually think I'm her. I think, he struggled for the right words. I think maybe souls persist in ways we don't understand. I think maybe the universe is stranger and more cyclical than we want to believe. But Fiona, even if there's some cosmic connection, you are still your own person. You have your own life, your own choices, your own identity. Nothing changes that. She was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then she said, Is there more? Because if we're having the big supernatural revelation conversation, I'd rather get all the bombs dropped at once. This was it. The moment where he could come clean about the oath, the entity, the ticking clock. But looking at her face, at the confusion and hurt and tentative trust still visible in her eyes, he couldn't do it. Couldn't add that weight to everything else she was processing. There's always more, he said instead. But the important parts are, I'm a vampire, I've lived a long time, I lost someone I loved, and I've come to care about you very much in a very short time. Everything else is just details. Coward, said a voice in his head that sounded suspiciously like Lucian. Fiona moved to the window, looked out at the dark street. I should go. I need time to think about this. Of course. But I'm not. She stopped, started again. I'm not saying goodbye forever. I just need space to process that my world just got a lot bigger and stranger. Take all the time you need. He meant it, even though every instinct screamed at him to convince her to stay. 15 days left. He had 15 days left and she was walking away. She paused at the door, looked back at him. For what it's worth, the vampire thing is actually not the part that bothers me most. No. The part that bothers me is that I really, really like you, and now I have to figure out if what I feel is real or if it's just some cosmic echo of what she felt. Then she was gone, and Matthias was left alone in his library with the weight of secrets and the countdown of days. Lucian found him an hour later, still standing in the same spot. She knows. Part of it. You didn't tell her about the oath. No. Matthias. I know. He spun, and his control finally cracked. I know I'm handling this badly. I know I'm running out of time. I know I'm probably going to lose her and doom her to something worse. But I can't. I can't tell her that she has to fall in love with me or suffer eternal damnation. That's not love. That's hostage-taking. Then what will you do? Matthias sank into his chair, buried his face in his hands. I don't know. For 3 days, he heard nothing. Fiona didn't call, didn't text, didn't knock on his door at midnight. Matthias tried to give her space, tried to respect her need for distance, but the silence was killing him. On the 4th day, she showed up at his door just after sunset. He opened it to find her standing there, hands in her pockets, expression determined. Hi, she said. Hi. I've been thinking. I figured. She pushed past him into the house, familiar with the layout now. I have questions, a lot of them, and I need you to answer honestly. Okay. They ended up back in the library because, of course, they did. She sat in her usual chair, and the rightness of it made his chest ache. First question, she said. Can you die? Like, permanently? Yes. It's difficult, but possible. Sunlight, certain types of wood, decapitation, the usual. Do you kill people? For blood? No, I haven't killed a human in over 500 years. I have sources donated blood, volunteers, arrangements with hospitals. It's more civilized than the old days. Do you have a vampire kingdom somewhere? A throne room with skulls and dramatic lighting? That surprised a laugh out of him. There's a court, technically. More like a governing council. We meet quarterly to handle disputes and maintain the balance between our world and the human world. It's mostly paperwork and tedious negotiations. Disappointing, she said, but there was the hint of a smile. Third question. What do you actually want from me? He took a breath. This was the important one. I want to know you. I want to spend time with you. I want to see if this thing between us is real. And if you decide it's not, if you decide I'm too complicated or too old or too much, then I want you to be happy anyway. She studied him for a long moment. You mean that? Every word. Even though I look like her. Especially because you're not her. He leaned forward, willing her to understand. Fiona, I spent 300 years remembering Katerina. I know every detail of her face, her voice, her mannerisms, and yes, you share some of those details. But you are fundamentally different in every way that matters. You are bold where she was timid. You ask questions instead of accepting answers. You challenge me, push back, demand honesty. She never did any of that. Maybe she would have if she'd lived longer. Maybe. But we'll never know. And I'm not interested in hypotheticals. I'm interested in the real person sitting in front of me. Fiona bit her lip, and you could see her wavering. Then she said, I have a confession. Okay. I looked you up, or tried to. There's a Matthias Orlov who shows up in some historical records from the 1800s, art dealer, same name. That's you, isn't it? Yes. And there are rumors. Stories about a vampire king who lives in this city, who's supposed to be fair but dangerous, who negotiated the peace accords between the supernatural factions 70 years ago. Also me, she shook her head slowly. This is insane. A week ago, my biggest concern was whether I'd cataloged the Morrison collection correctly. Now I'm sitting in a vampire king's library discussing geopolitics from before my grandparents were born. We can go back to talking about archives if you prefer. Don't tempt me. But she was smiling now, and some of the tension had eased from her shoulders. Okay, final question. If I decide to see where this goes, to keep spending time with you, what happens? Do I become a vampire? Do I get dragged into supernatural politics? Do I have to attend tedious quarterly meetings? Only if you want to, he said seriously. Fiona, I'm not asking you to change your life. I'm asking if I can be part of it. Everything else is your choice, always your choice. She was quiet, thinking. Then she stood, crossed to where he sat, and held out her hand. Okay? He took her hand carefully. Okay? Okay, let's see where this goes. But Matthias? No more secrets. If there's anything else I should know about you, about what being with you means, anything you tell me. Deal? He should tell her now, about the oath, the entity, the countdown. But she was here, she was willing to try, and he was a coward who couldn't bear to risk losing her again when he'd just got her back. Deal, he said, and hated himself for the lie. The next week was perfect. Fiona came over every evening after work, and they fell back into their easy rhythm as though the supernatural revelation had been nothing but a minor bump. She asked endless questions about vampire history, about his life, about the world she'd never known existed. He answered as honestly as he could, careful not to reveal the one secret that could ruin everything. 8 days left. 7. 6. On the 6th day, Lucian pulled him aside. You're running out of time. I know. The entity will come whether she loves you or not, whether you've told her or not. I know. If you care about her at all, you'll warn her. Give her a chance to prepare. Matthias turned on him, snarling. And what would I say? What possible words could make this better? The truth. Lucian grabbed his shoulders, forced him to meet his eyes. Matthias, you are my oldest friend. I have watched you survive wars and betrayals and centuries of loneliness. But if you let her walk into this blind, if that creature takes her because you were too afraid to be honest, you will never forgive yourself. She'll hate me. Maybe, but she'll be alive to hate you. Isn't that better than the alternative? He knew Lucian was right, had known from the beginning, but the fear of losing her, of watching her pull away when she learned about the oath, was paralyzing. 5 days left, he told her on the 4th day. They were walking through his private garden, another impossibility, a space that existed in folded dimensions beneath his house, and she was laughing at a story about a disastrous diplomatic mission to the French court in 1782. The sound of her laughter felt like absolution and condemnation in equal measure. "Fiona," he said, and something in his tone made her stop, turn to face him. "What's wrong?" "Everything. Nothing. The weight of centuries of choices and mistakes. I need to tell you something, and you're going to be angry. You have every right to be angry." Her expression shifted to concern. "You're scaring me again." "I'm sorry. I seem to keep doing that." He took her hand, held it carefully. "When Katerina died, I wasn't rational. I was desperate. I did something stupid." "What did you do?" "I made a bargain with an entity, an old thing that deals in oaths and binding promises. I asked for her to come back, and it said that sometimes souls return, but never predictably. It offered me a deal." He watched her face as understanding began to dawn. "What kind of deal?" "If her soul returned within 300 years, I would have one lunar cycle to win her love freely. If I succeeded, we would have our second chance. If I failed..." He couldn't finish, couldn't say the words. "If you failed what, Matthias?" "The entity would claim her soul, take it to wherever lost things go, permanently." The silence that followed felt like the end of the world. Fiona pulled her hand away, stepped back, face pale. "How long?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "For 4 days. 4 days." She said it like she was testing the taste of the words. "You've known this whole time, since the night I knocked on your door, and you didn't tell me." "I couldn't..." "Don't!" She held up a hand, stopping him. "Don't tell me you couldn't. You chose not to. There's a difference." "You're right. Damn right I'm right." She was shaking now, fury and fear mixing together. "So what, you were just going to hope I fell in love with you in time? Hope that I conveniently developed feelings before some cosmic deadline? And if I didn't, if I needed more time or decided you weren't right for me, then what? I'd just get dragged into hell or wherever because you made a stupid bargain 3 centuries ago? I was going to fight it. I was going to find a way to break the oath before it could claim you. Oh well, that's fine then, as long as you had a vague plan to fight an ancient entity with 4 days' notice." She turned away, pressed her hands to her face. "I can't believe this. I can't believe you." "I know, I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix this." She whirled back to face him. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You didn't just lie to me. You made me a pawn in some cosmic game without my consent. You let me develop feelings for you, knowing that there was this sword hanging over my head. I never meant..." "I don't care what you meant. I care what you did." She was crying now, angry tears streaming down her face. "You said I had choices. You said everything was up to me. But that was a lie, wasn't it? Because the biggest choice of all, whether to risk my soul on your ancient baggage, you took that away from me." He had no defense. She was absolutely right. "You're right? I know I'm right." She wiped at her face furiously. "So what now? What's the plan? How do we fix this?" "I don't know." The admission cost him, but he owed her honesty. "I've been researching for weeks. There's no clear way to break an oath-bound contract once it's in motion, but I'm not giving up. I'll find something." "In 4 days. In 4 days." She laughed, bitter. "Great. Perfect. This is just perfect." She started walking toward the exit, toward the stairs that would take her back to the real house, back to the normal world. "I need to go." "Fiona, please." "No, I can't. I can't be near you right now. I need to think." He let her go, watched her climb the stairs and disappear, listened to the front door close, felt the absence of her like a physical wound. Lucian appeared from the shadows. "That went badly. I've ruined everything." "Possibly. Or possibly you've finally given her the truth she needed. What she does with it is up to her now. If she doesn't come back, then you fight for her anyway. Whether she loves you or not, you fight. That's what you do." 3 days left. Fiona didn't call, didn't answer his messages. Matthias threw himself into research, poring over ancient texts, calling in favors from witches and warlocks and anyone who might know how to break an oath-bound contract. Nothing. Every answer was the same. Once made, the bargain held. 2 days left. He stood outside the Historical Society at closing time, waiting. When Fiona emerged, she saw him immediately, stopped on the steps. "I'm not ready to talk yet," she said. "I know. I just wanted you to know I'm still looking, still trying to find a way to fix this. And if you can't, then I fight. The entity will come when the month ends. I'll fight it with everything I have. And if you lose?" He met her eyes. "Then I lose, but at least you'll know I tried." She looked at him for a long moment, and he couldn't read her expression. Then she said, "I don't want you to die for me, Matthias. I don't want you to suffer for my mistakes. Then maybe we're both out of luck." She adjusted her bag, started down the steps. "But for what it's worth, I believe you that you tried. I believe you that you care. It's a lot to process." "I know." She paused beside him. "One day left after this one. You better have a plan by then." Then she was gone, and he was left with hope and terror in equal measure. 1 day left. Matthias gathered every resource he had: Lucian, a powerful witch named Esmeralda who owed him a favor, 2 warlocks from the council, and an ancient vampire who had studied metaphysics for 6 centuries. They worked through the day in his warded basement, searching for any loophole, any weakness in the contract. At sunset, as he rose from his research, there was a knock at his door. Fiona stood on his threshold, just as she had that first night. But this time, her expression was determined, resolved. "Can I come in?" "Always." They went to the library. She took her usual chair. He stayed standing, too agitated to sit. "I figured something out," she said. "What?" "The entity's bargain was that if Katerina's soul returned, you had to win her love freely, right?" "Yes. But here's the thing. I'm not Katerina." He started to protest, but she held up a hand. "Let me finish. I know I look like her. I know there's probably some cosmic connection, some echo or whatever. But Matthias, I'm not her. I'm Fiona Davenport. I grew up in Ohio. I have a degree in library science. I've never been poisoned or died tragically or lived in the 1700s. I'm my own person with my own life and my own choices. I know that. Do you? Because if you do, if you really truly believe that I'm not just her recycled soul, but an entirely separate person, then the entity's bargain doesn't hold. It's not Katerina's soul. It's mine. Which means the contract is void." He stared at her, processing. "That's either brilliant or completely wrong, I know, but I talked to a friend who knows about supernatural law. She's a witch, apparently, long story. Turns out my life was weird before I even met you, and she said contracts are literal. If the entity bargained for Katerina's soul specifically, and I'm not Katerina, then it has no claim. Unless you are her soul reborn. Which brings me to my second point." Fiona stood, moved closer to him. Even if there's some cosmic thread connecting us across centuries, I still get to choose who I am. I'm not bound by her choices or her feelings or her history. I'm my own person. And if I choose to love you, it's because I, Fiona, love you, Matthias, not because some past version of me did." His heart was hammering. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I do love you, or at least I'm well on my way there. Which is terrifying and complicated and probably a terrible idea given that you're an immortal vampire king with a lot of baggage. But it's real. It's mine. It's not an echo or a shadow or a cosmic joke. It's just me. Choosing you." He couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "Fiona, so here's what's going to happen. When this entity shows up at midnight, we're going to tell it that its bargain is void. Because I'm not Katerina, and what I feel isn't a continuation of what she felt. It's new. It's mine. And it doesn't owe anything to ancient oaths or dying prophecies. And if the entity disagrees, then we fight." She said it with absolute conviction, together, because that's what people do when they love each other, right? They fight for each other. He crossed to her in 3 strides, pulled her into his arms, held her like she was the only solid thing in a shifting world. She wrapped her arms around him just as tightly, face pressed against his chest. "I don't deserve you," he said into her hair. "Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway." At midnight, they stood in his entrance hall, Matthias, Fiona, Lucian, and Esmeralda. The witch had drawn protective circles, prepared wards, done everything possible to strengthen their position. But everyone knew that when an oath-bound entity arrived, rules tended to become flexible. The air went cold. The candles flickered. And then something was there, not quite present but undeniably real. It had no fixed shape, existing in the space between perception and reality. "The month is ended," it said, voice like wind through empty rooms. "The bargain comes due." Matthias stepped forward, keeping Fiona behind him. "The bargain is void." The terms were clear. If Katerina's soul returned, you had 1 lunar cycle to win her love. The cycle is complete. Payment is owed. "She's not Katerina," Matthias said firmly. "Look at her. Really look. She's a different person. Different life, different identity, different soul." The entity shifted, focused on Fiona. She stepped out from behind Matthias, chin raised, refusing to show fear. "I'm Fiona Davenport," she said clearly. "I've lived my entire life as myself. I don't have Katerina's memories or her history. Whatever cosmic coincidence brought me to this door, I'm not her, which means your bargain doesn't apply to me." The entity was silent, considering. Then it said, "The soul carries imprints. The essence persists across incarnations. You are her, returned." "No," Fiona said. "Maybe there's an imprint, maybe there's a thread, but I'm not her. And even if I was, even if I'm the reincarnation you're claiming, I still get to choose. I choose to be Fiona. I choose my own identity. I choose my own love. That's what makes it real." The bargain required her love to be won freely. "And it was," Matthias said, "not through manipulation or destiny or obligation. She chose me, as herself, as Fiona. Which means if you're claiming she's Katerina returned, then the bargain is fulfilled. And if you're claiming she's not Katerina, then the bargain never applied. Either way, you have no claim." The silence stretched. The entity rippled, edges blurring. Then it said, "A paradox, how entertaining." "Is that a yes or a no?" Fiona demanded. "It is an acknowledgement that you have found the loophole I left deliberately. I am old, child. I deal in bargains that test whether love is real. If you had been merely an echo, a hollow repetition of what came before, the bargain would stand. But you have insisted on your own identity. You have chosen with full knowledge and full heart. That is what makes love true." Relief flooded through Matthias so intensely he nearly staggered. "So we're free. The bargain is satisfied. The payment is your happiness, freely chosen." The entity began to fade. Though a warning, choose again, every day. That is the price of love that persists beyond death and destiny. Then it was gone, and they were alone in the entrance hall, 4 people standing in protective circles that were no longer needed. "Did that just happen?" Fiona asked faintly. "I think so," Matthias said. Then she was laughing, bright and relieved and a little hysterical. "We won on a technicality. We defeated an ancient cosmic entity with semantics and a philosophical argument about personal identity." "To be fair, it was a very good argument," Lucian pointed out. Esmeralda was already packing up her supplies. "I'm glad it worked out, but I'm also never doing this again. Oath-bound entities give me hives," she pointed at Matthias. "You owe me a very large favor." "Name it." "I will. Later, when you're less disgustingly happy." But she was smiling as she left, Lucian following with a salute and a knowing look. Then Matthias and Fiona were alone in the entrance hall, where this had all started, where she had knocked by accident, where he had opened the door and seen the face he'd been waiting 300 years to see again. "So," Fiona said, "we survived." "We did. And I told an ancient entity that I love you, which, no pressure or anything." "Is it true?" He had to hear it again, had to be sure. "Yes," she said simply. "I love you, not because of destiny or reincarnation or cosmic jokes, but because you're brilliant and kind and you make me laugh, because you respect my choices even when they're hard, because you looked at me and saw me, not a ghost. That's worth loving." He kissed her then, gentle and careful, and full of 300 years of waiting. She kissed back, rising on her toes, hands in his hair, solid and real and entirely herself. When they finally pulled apart, she said, "So what now?" "Now we live," Matthias said. "However you want. Whatever makes you happy." "I want to keep my job. I'm not giving up the archives." "Done. And I want to learn more about your world. The vampire politics, the supernatural community, all of it. I'll teach you everything. And I want to stay in my apartment for now. It's too fast to move in together, even if we did just defeat an ancient entity through the power of love and semantics." He laughed. Also reasonable. "But I want to keep coming here, keep spending evenings in your library, keep learning who you are beyond the king and the ancient immortal." "I'd like that." "Good." She leaned against him, relaxed and happy. "Also, at some point we need to tell Jade about all this because she's going to lose her mind. I'll let you handle that conversation." "Coward." "Absolutely." They stood together in the entrance hall, surrounded by candlelight and old magic. Two people who had found each other by accident and chosen each other on purpose. Outside, the street was quiet, ordinary, the kind of place where nothing remarkable ever happened. But inside, in the space that defied physics and held centuries of history, Matthias Orlov held Fiona Davenport and thought about the future for the first time in 300 years. Not the past, not the weight of old ghosts, but the genuine, thrilling possibility of tomorrow. "I have a question," Fiona said suddenly. "What?" "Do vampires celebrate birthdays? Because mine's coming up and I'm trying to figure out what you get someone who's lived for 9 centuries and probably owns everything already." He grinned. "How do you feel about rare historical documents? Are you seriously offering to use your ancient vampire connections to get me archival material for my birthday?" "I'm seriously offering to use my ancient vampire connections to get you whatever makes you happy." She kissed him again, smiling against his mouth. "Best wrong door I ever knocked on. Best accident that ever happened." They had survived the prophecy, defeated the entity, and chosen each other freely. And as Fiona pulled him toward the library, already launching into a story about a particularly frustrating filing system at work, Matthias thought that maybe, after 300 years of waiting, he had finally found what he was looking for. Not a second chance, not a replacement, but something entirely new. A future built on choice, on trust, on love that was real because it was freely given. The door to 20 Cedar Street stood quiet under the streetlights, ordinary and unremarkable. But inside, in the impossible spaces where past and present folded together, two people laughed and talked and built something that would last far beyond prophecies or ancient bargains. They had all the time in the world now, and they intended to use it. 6 months later, Fiona moved into a drawer, then a closet. Then, somehow half the library was covered in her books and notes, and Matthias would find her reference materials mixed with his ancient texts, modern archival theory sitting companionably beside medieval philosophy. A year after that, she asked about turning. Not demanded, not assumed, just asked. "Is it something you'd want? For me to stay? Long term?" He told her honestly, "I want whatever gives you the fullest life. If that's a human lifespan, then I'll treasure every moment. If you want to see centuries with me, then I'll be honored to share them. But Fiona, it has to be your choice, completely your choice." She thought about it for 6 months more, researching, talking to other vampires, understanding what she would gain and what she would lose. Then she said yes, but not yet. "I want to finish my doctorate first. I want to know I accomplished what I meant to as a human. Then we'll talk about forever." He waited. He was good at waiting. 3 years after that wrong knock at midnight, Fiona Davenport finished her doctorate in archival science, and on a quiet evening in the same library where they'd first talked until dawn, she asked Matthias Orlov to turn her. "Are you sure?" he asked, needing to hear it one more time. "I'm sure. I choose this. I choose you. I choose forever." So he did, carefully and gently, with Esmeralda standing by to manage the magic that would ease the transition. And when Fiona woke 3 days later with red eyes and new strength and an eternity stretched before her, the first thing she said was, "I'm starving. Do you have any of that ethically sourced O negative? Matthias laughed and held her and thought that some stories, the best ones, didn't end. They just kept going, chapter after chapter, choice after choice, each day chosen freely and offered willingly. They had survived prophecy and fate and ancient bargains. They had fought for the right to choose their own story. And now they had forever to live it. On Cedar Street, door number 20 stood quiet and ordinary. But inside, in the impossible spaces where love defeated destiny, Matthias and Fiona built a life that was entirely, perfectly theirs. And they lived, if not happily ever after, because forever was complicated, and nothing was simple when you had centuries to navigate, then at least happily, deliberately, choosing each other again and again and again, which, in the end, was so much better than any fairy tale.